Most M&A negotiations fail to realize their full value. Not because the parties disagree, but because critical trade-offs never surface. In this video, you'll see a realistic, anonymized, seller-side view of an M&A negotiation, based on the Highflyer case studies and inspired by an actual Deloitte-led transaction, and modeled using Smartsettle Infinity. Daniel Crombie, the Deloitte advisor, has been working with Frank Barnes, the founder and seller, over an extended period to prepare for this transaction. Early in the process, Frank's priorities were privately modeled. Following a high-interest auction, a small group of qualified bidders advanced, each working independently with Smartsettle Infinity to express its own preferences. Through this structured analysis, Smartsettle identified the bidder with the greatest potential to maximize the seller's overall interests. Frank and Daniel are now meeting to prepare for the negotiation phase of the deal. You'll see how the seller's priorities are captured without revealing leverage, how economic and non-economic terms are evaluated together, and how structured modeling uncovers value that traditional bargaining almost always leaves behind. This is not a debate between people, it's a disciplined search for agreement, where both sides end up better off than they expected.
Well, Frank, we're getting close to crunch time, and I'm glad that you agreed to meet with me to just again make sure that we really understand together how the smart settle negotiation is going to work. And I've also made some diagrams that we're going to use in our time together today for you. How are you doing?
I'm doing okay. I've been thinking about the smart settle system that we're using here, and I guess it is intriguing to me, and I feel like I might be missing something mostly around this point. If I tell the system what matters the most to me, aren't I giving away like key leverage for that?
You know, Frank, that is the absolute right question to ask. It gets at what's at the heart of what's different about smart settle. We're actually going to be disclosing preferences. We're trying to draw out your preferences, but we're not disclosing them to the other party, to Janet. We're disclosing them to a secure, neutral, intelligent platform. So you never show, you never show your hand to the buyer.
Okay, well, I mean that bit is reassuring because that would be a problem. But how does that actually work in this kind of negotiation?
I One of the diagrams that I worked on, I'm going to pop up here, as you can see there now. Uh, it shows you a bit about this. You see, we're separating two things that traditional negotiations tend to forget. Disclosure by you or by Janet is not the same as exposure. There's disclosure of interests, and then there's exposure of interests. In conventional deals, are the same thing, but smart settle breaks the link.
Right. Okay, explain that to me just one more time.
Okay, let me try. In the traditional negotiation, if you said, I care more about certainty than price, the
Yeah.
buyer for sure would use that information against you and try and get the price lower, right? But
Yeah.
here the buyer never sees the preference. Just like you, they're also teaching Smart Settle about how they become satisfied. What do they want? And both of you are trying to work towards an optimal deal. In other words, it's not a zero-sum game. It's not a win-lose game. It's a let's maximize our interest game. So what's changing is the nature of the negotiation. Instead of the typical adversarial process where you go back and forth with no knowledge of what's important to the other side, here Smart Settle knows and provides suggestions by way of suggested packages to both parties to help you get to a deal. And interestingly enough, the suggestions of Smart Settle will never disclose your needs, wants, or concerns because Janet will never know whether a suggested offer is coming from you or is being generated by the system. It just shows up. Just like you don't know whether a suggestion coming from Smart Settle is one that the system made or one that Janet made. It does
Okay.
become collaborative. You're not sitting together daily, but through the Smartsettle app, you're actually engaged in a collaborative search for packages that work for you without giving up any leverage.
Okay, so this is how, in essence, I'm not really negotiating with Janet with these disclosures. Instead, I'm negotiating with the computer essentially.
That's an interesting way to put it. Yeah, I think that's reasonable. Here, let me show you. To make this work in an organized way, our starting point is building what we call in the Smartsettle world a single negotiating framework, or you could call it SNF for short. The SNF is essentially, as you'll see, a list of terms to be negotiated that's drawn right out of the letter of intent and term sheet.
Right.
Everything that you've already agreed to stays fixed. In other words, things that Janet has proposed that you're good with,
Yep.
we don't model those. But you'll remember from Janet's term sheet, there were a few items, well, several items, where we're not there yet. And so we need to negotiate those. The SNF makes it possible to negotiate complete deal packages addressing everything. So you're not
Right.
having to do one at a time by any means. You're doing it
Right.
all together. And
Right.
then once you and I are confident that we've really got your preferences super well represented, we'll be able to see how one package compares to another. I think we're pretty much close to being there, but let's make sure.
Yeah, okay. I think I'm getting that. So let's dive into it.
You bet. So Frank, here's what I've heard you say so far. You'll accept an earnout if you can drive what controls it.
Yeah, 100%.
And specifically, your the least offensive or most favorite earnout, if you want to put it that way, is one where the only thing that you need to do is stay employed, stay engaged for the earnout period, 3 or 4 years.
Right.
In the middle of three possible earnout structures would be one where you need to maintain the revenues of the business at or above what they are now.
Yeah.
And your least favorite, the third one, is an EBITDA based earnout, especially an EBITDA based where you have to keep escalating because it's a harder standard to meet. Plus, they can play games.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And then the other thing that I heard that is right at the top, super important for you, is your ability to leave the business after a fixed period of time,
Yeah.
3 years, no more than 4 years.
Yeah.
Smartsettle can capture all that.
Yeah. Okay, so if the buyer comes in and they propose some kind of, let's say an EBITDA earnout, an EBITDA with an escalator to the system.
The worst
The
possibility. Okay.
system knows that I'm not happy about this, but it's going to adjust other things in other places. Is that what's going on?
Yeah. So if they really want to push hard for this kind of earnout, something else is going to change significantly. It might be price or a combination of price and a bunch of other things, but it'll compensate to get you back to a comfortable place. I suppose if you put enough money on the table, uh, then this becomes an acceptable deal to you.
Everything has its price.
Right.
Okay, so about that, there are some things we've talked about that I do actually care quite a bit about,
Mhm.
and they're hard because they're not about the money. It's about my kids, the staff that have been with me, some of them quite a while actually,
Yeah.
and the culture of the company. It matters to me because we've worked so hard on those things.
Yeah, and I've realized from the conversations we've had over the last few months that those are really, really important to you. And I appreciate some of those would be hard to put a number on. But the good thing about Smartsettle is you don't need math to model everything. Here, take a look at the diagram on this that I put up here for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that shows a bunch of factors and just how these factors can be captured. Now, adjusting on some of these factors may move the headline price quite a bit. Others will have less weight, but everything can be modeled.
So in this way, I don't have to apologize for making an issue something that I care about.
No, not at all, Frank. Um, Deals that violate something that you care about deeply will score really poorly, no matter how attractive the price might be. The
Right.
system takes those concerns quite seriously, puts them in context, and relates it to the rest of the deal without romanticizing or distorting the economics.
Okay, so let's test this one last time. How does this make me stronger as a seller?
Uh, well, two things come to mind, Frank. The first is something that's already happened. Well, it's because we're forcing our buyers to compete not just on price. We remember we required all of our buyers to disclose their preferences to Smartsettle,
Right.
and the program figured out which of those buyers was able to get you the most satisfied, and it wasn't necessarily on price. It
Yeah.
was looking at the complete bundle. And in Smartsettle, there's something called the efficiency frontier, which is where both buyer and seller are getting the maximum possible satisfaction. And each buyer has a different efficiency frontier. Janet's efficiency frontier was the one that yielded the most opportunity to you. So even though she wasn't the highest price, we decided to negotiate with her.
Yeah.
So that's one way. The other way is it's giving you a rational basis for understanding what you're negotiating for and why. So often, particularly I've seen this over years of doing deals, sellers are under an enormous amount of pressure. And they often go on gut feel. This offer feels good to me. This is giving you a very rational basis for making decisions based on your preferences that we've worked on. So in a sense, Smartsettle is helping you get into your own head and look and understand yourself better than you would without the system. And then when we finally reach a deal, and I'm confident, Frank, that we'll get there, you'll be able to explain this to your family, to any of your advisors, but mostly when you look in the mirror, you'll be able to explain it to yourself.
So all right. I guess I'm game. This makes sense. Let's do it. All right.
Over the next week, Frank and his advisors worked privately with the Smartsettle model to prepare for the bargaining phase. What you are seeing here now is Frank's private view of the negotiation, visible only to him and his advisors. Beyond the original communication around the letter of intent and term sheet, no detailed offers were exchanged. Importantly, no leverage was revealed. Instead, preferences were tested, refined, and validated through simulations, ensuring that the model truly reflected what mattered most to Frank. Let's join their conversation on one of those sessions.
Well, Frank,
Daniel?
good day. So it's been several weeks since we started this process. We've done a number of simulations to make sure we understand your preferences correctly. And just before we go to bargaining, let's just go through that a little bit one more time and see if we can properly model your point of view. As I've told you, nothing here is visible to the buyer until you choose to put a proposal on the table.
Yes, okay.
So right now you can see that space is empty. The issues are organized into logical groupings for you. So from our view here, you can see that each range is oriented so the outcomes you prefer are on the right.
Okay.
Obviously, the ones you don't are on the left.
Yeah.
So some of these issues have been created to help represent your own preferences. They're private. Again, nobody sees this except you. So let's take cash after tax. So you'll see here that the range is from $24 to $28 million. Our point system that you'll see here is basically assigning a point for every $100,000. So here we have a range of $4 million, 40 points.
Yep.
if this issue scaled linearly, but as we know, it doesn't, because below 27 million, your dissatisfaction really accelerates, right?
Yes,
So
yeah.
we've assigned it 100 points to represent that extra weight, which makes it really one of your most important issues. Not surprisingly, cash.
So that part makes sense to me. But there's parts of this negotiation that are rather complicated. How did you know what my preferences are? I mean, even I don't know how to put a number on some of these things.
Yeah, I appreciate it's really difficult to put numbers on things. So we used a different methodology. We would put packages together for you, and we would see where are you equally satisfied, this and this, or that and that. And by doing those, what we call even swaps in the Smartsettle system, we actually were able to do modeling for everything. So let's try that now.
Okay.
And again, you'll see how we infer the preferences. You remember all those even swaps we did, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
of
so
course.
let's just do this one more time so you're really comfortable with it. So if you were considering, see the yellow package?
Yes.
That represents 30% retained equity by you. So the buyer's buying 70%, you retain 30%, and $27 million in your jeans money. In other words, money you get after taxes. Now, let's see, okay, if we move that 30% up to 40%, as you see on the screen,
Yeah.
that's obviously better for you, keeping more. To create an even swap, what would the cash after taxes need to be for you?
Well, I do like retained equity as long as there's a clean put at 4 years.
Right.
Oh, 3 better. I would go to 40, and if the cash after tax was reduced, I imagine 25 million.
Yeah, that's what the system thinks would be your equivalent. So you're agreeing with the system. So
Okay.
from that information, you can see that we've determined the relative importance of this issue. See there? And with that value, these packages both have a rating of 58 points, so they're equivalent.
Okay.
So we can do these similar even swaps for all the pairs until we're totally satisfied that your preferences are well represented, which is what we've been doing.
Yes.
So we're pretty confident and ready to go into negotiation. Let's do one more, again, just so you can see this. So we're talking about risk exposure. So there's a buyer-friendly option, a seller-friendly option you'll see on there.
Yeah. So I actually discussed this particular issue with my lawyer previously. We kind of figure it's worth about $500,000, $500,000 between the worst case scenario for me and the best case scenario for me.
Okay, so you see that with 1 point worth $100,000, we've already assigned 5 points to this issue.
Okay.
But remember, there were actually 3 options for this. There was the buyer-friendly,
Yep.
the seller-friendly, and then kind of in the middle, the balanced one.
Right. Right. And for me, the difference between the balanced and the seller friendly is very little.
So you'll see then we've modeled that by making the weight difference, the point difference between seller-friendly and balance quite small.
Okay. Yeah.
Later that day, Frank, advised by Daniel, is now ready to move to the actual negotiation with Janet, representing Dodge Ventures, the buyer, and her advisor.
We will keep track of the negotiation here, the packages that go back and forth here on the right-hand side, as you can see.
Mm-hmm.
So in our previous discussions, you've created 5 private reference packages to help you understand your preferences, which we said we would use now in the bargaining phase. So the rating of each package is a contribution of all of the different issues that we're talking about. The sum score of all of those is how we get to a package number. So you'll see there, see the orange package, that was the buyer's original offer, which we set to 0 for convenience.
Okay, a baseline.
So then we've got something called pessimistic, which is worse. It's negative number. It's a sort of worst case scenario on every issue, just to give you the perspective. And then what we're aiming for in this package, as we've discussed, is what we've now labeled target, which is one where you're comfortable and satisfied.
Yep.
So that's what we're aiming for. So we're now in session 1. Let's start by proposing your optimistic package. As you might expect, the optimistic package tends to cover the predefined negotiating ranges, right?
Yep.
So now we could continue exchanging proposals like this with complete packages. It would still be a lot better than traditional negotiation, but we can let Smartsettle, which knows how both sides become satisfied, generate some semi-optimal suggestions. Or let's ask for a suggestion right now. Let's take a look at it.
When new packages appear, Frank takes time to inspect them carefully. Frank notices that package 3 is worse than his target on transition structure and post-closing risk exposure, but gives him more cash after tax. It also leaves him with some retained equity and a smaller earnout. Overall, Frank agrees that he really does like this better than his target, which confirms that his preferences are well represented. When Frank accepts it, the yellow dot that appears is visible only to Frank. The buyer is not aware that Frank has accepted this package. This is part of the negotiating strategy. If the buyer also accepts it, there'll be a deal. Let's rejoin the conversation and find out.
So here, I'm ending session 1. Okay, I see that the buyer has not yet accepted it.
In session 2, Frank and Daniel put their planned concession on the table to show some visible movement and narrow the negotiating ranges. Then Daniel also had another idea.
As you can see, there's no need for a drawn-out negotiation dance. With Smartsettle's multivariate blind bidding, you can get to the chase immediately by proposing your target package in stealth mode, anonymously as a masquerade, just disguised as another suggestion. That helps bypass bias that often blocks these agreements. Like, if the buyer knew that you accepted this, that's going to change how they think about it. So if you'd like to accept that, let's end session 2, and you reach a deal if they also accept the package.
Realizing that the buyer has not accepted Frank's concession in package 7, Daniel has a suggestion for Frank.
Let's ask Smartsettle to help us here and work a little harder. Why don't we ask it to generate what for you would be an equivalent package to your target?
Okay.
So your target was that suggestion there.
Package 9 is worth as much as package 7, which you've already accepted.
Frank takes a long look at package 9 and makes an observation.
It mirrors the even swaps that we've done in the past, and I would say it's equivalent. Yeah, let's accept it.
Okay, all right, let's do that. So I'm just going to accept it here. Let's end session 3.
Frank and Daniel wait with some considerable excitement. The news comes back as they had hoped. The buyer has accepted package 9.
Well, Frank, look at that. We've reached a baseline deal that matches your target aspirations. It has you retaining equity, as you can see, with a smaller earnout. Now, here's where the really cool part comes. There may well be still some value on the table that Smartsettle can find for both of you. Remember, it's got to be good for you, got to be good for the buyer.
Okay.
Shall we ask? Okay. Let's do that. Yeah, look at that. Smartsettle thinks it's found something better. It has you retaining a little more equity, but you also get more cash. What do you think?
When Frank realizes that the improvement is worth an additional 25 points, about $2.5 million more than the baseline, Frank's smile turns to puzzlement.
Yeah, I mean, this feels even better. But if I'm getting more, surely the buyer's not going to accept this. Like, they'll be getting a worse deal.
Well, let's take a look.
After only a few minutes, Frank is elated when the green dot appears. Improvement is confirmed as the new final agreement.
Look at that. They've accepted the package.
Okay.
You've got a better deal than your target.
Okay, wow, they accepted it too. This whole process feels like magic, Daniel. I've achieved our target with not a lot of friction. And it's better than the buyer's initial offer. And you're telling me that the buyer's having the same experience.
Absolutely, they are. Because the buyer has their own set of preferences that you don't know. But Smartsettle knows things like maybe the buyer was really concerned about keeping you motivated and engaged. So
Yeah.
when you retain more equity, while that's good for you because you're giving more of the business, from the buyer's point of view, that's getting you more deeply aligned with the outcomes. And so for the buyer, that might make perfect sense. And that's the kind of thing that Smartsettle uncovers that normal positional negotiation never uncovers. There's value that emerges, and that is the magic of Smartsettle.
It does feel like magic.
What made this outcome possible wasn't concession. It was structure that separated disclosure from exposure and intuition from optimization. Suppose this yellow circle represents the enterprise value in our transaction, about $39 million. Bargaining in traditional positional negotiation treats value as if it were a fixed pie. But when the full set of trade-offs is modeled, hidden opportunities begin to appear. In this case, structured negotiation revealed more than $12 million in potential additional joint value, roughly 30% more than the parties' walkaway positions. The parties weren't splitting the pie, they were enlarging it. For the seller, this meant clarity and confidence. For the buyer, alignment without unnecessary risk. When negotiations are modeled, not argued, agreements that once seemed impossible become visible. Smartsettle Infinity helps negotiators explore complex trade-offs and uncover value that traditional bargaining leaves behind. Structured negotiation for complex deals.